Welcome everybody to today's webinar on delivering LibGuides, training and guidance at the point of need with Lean Library. We're going to give it 30 seconds because we can see people are joining. Also, if people could introduce themselves to the chat just to confirm you can hear and see me, and you can hear and see Talia as well. Whilst we're waiting for people to join, that would be great.
Hi, everyone.
Fabulous. Thank you, Alan. You've confirmed you can hear two different voices and people are confirming they can hear and see. Great. Okay, well, we've given a minute, so we'll kick off now. So a bit of housekeeping. As I said, introduce yourself in the chat, tell us where you're from, confirm you can hear and see us. If you are having trouble hearing or seeing, please leave Zoom and rejoin. When you join, it prompts you to connect computer audio. You can miss it on the first joining. The session is being recorded today, and all registrants will receive the recording in 2 days. Feel free to share this with any colleagues that you want to. It will also be available on the Technology from Sage website. Please ask any questions throughout in the Q&A box and we'll answer at the end. There's often lots of good chat in the chat, but we miss it if it's questions, so put it in the Q&A box too. And we may call on you to unmute and expand on your questions. Please don't be too shy. We want to have a good discussion today. So first of all, who am I? I am Amy Sparrow. I'm the head of product marketing at Technology from Sage. And for those who aren't familiar with Technology from Sage, it's a division of Sage Publishing, which I'm sure everyone in the librarian community will be more familiar with, that provides innovative library technologies that amplify the academic library and put them back in the modern patron's workflow, which really is online today. I'm also joined by Talia Richards, who you can see on the screen. Talia is the Vice President of Marketing at Springshare, and we'll be covering Springshare later, although I'm sure you're all familiar, so I won't steal that thunder now. So today, what are we covering? Introductions and housekeeping, already done. I'm going to give a little quick overview of the role of the library in providing patron guidance. And then we're going to dive into a Springshare overview and what makes a good LibGuide and what makes a good LibChat. And then talk about why Talia and I are together today. So for those who might not know, there is an integration between Lean Library, which is a Technology from Sage product, and Springshare, LibGuides and LibChat, which we'll be talking about today and giving a quick demo of. And then there'll be plenty of time of Q&A. These timings are tentative. We're going to try and get as much Q&A as possible. So, sorry. Before we do this, my intro, I've just realized my intro slide's missing, but I'm going to pause it anyway because it'll be quick. So what is the role of the library in, I'll go back to this. So what is the role of the library in providing patron guidance? So you might not all be familiar with, particularly with Springshare, I think people will, but everyone's going to be familiar with some form of library guidance, whether that is PowerPoint decks, offering their own training in-house, online, written training, whatever it is, online courses. That is something that the library is providing more and more as a patron services provider. So where the library used to be more seen as the content hub, where people would go, the physical library, people would go to the content hub, I think we'll all agree that now the library is being seen more as how it can train and provide services to its patrons. So that role is growing. With that in mind, I'm going to launch a quick poll. Is that the right time for you, Talia?
Yeah, sure. Perfect. Thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm Talia. I'm a little bit of a silly person, so I like to put funny pictures up during my presentation. So hopefully you find it humorous as well. But just to give you a little bit of background from me, I am a librarian. I do have a master's in library sciences that I got from the University of Rhode Island. And I was a librarian for, 6.5 years, perhaps, at Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. And I was the first to bring LibGuides and then LibAnswers to the entire state of Rhode Island. So I have a long, long history with these tools from when I was a librarian. And I joined Springshare back in 2010. So I've been a Springie for a good long time. And Amy, what were the results of that poll? They flashed on the screen real quick. Did we have a good number?
I can share it again. Sorry, it was 80% yes, 20% not yet. But I'll just flash it up again. Sorry, I thought it would last longer than that.
Nope, sorry. I was looking at my own face on the slides and not looking.
I do the same, yeah.
And not looking at the full results. So really interesting, about 80% of you are using LibGuides or have used it already. And I'm seeing a lot of familiar names in the chat. So good to see you all again. Next slide. So I won't go into a lot of information about what LibGuides are. Seems like everybody knows what they are. If they're not already using them, they're going to be using them. What I want to kind of point out is that there are a lot of LibGuides out there in the world. And there are over, almost 1 million, give or take at any time. This is just published LibGuides. There are a lot more that are private or are unpublished and then become published and then become unpublished again, as you're maintaining your systems. But almost 1 million LibGuides from 284,000 librarians across 5,800 institutions in 103 countries. This is just an astronomical amount of incredible content that has been curated and cultivated by the highest level of information professionals around the world. And when we think about, we just look at these numbers, roughly speaking, the average number of LibGuides per institution is roughly 161. I've seen some that have a lot more. I've seen some that have in the thousands, if you can believe it. And I've seen some that have, not as many. It all depends on the size of your institution and your user base. And one of the things that I always hear from our users, in addition to questions like, how do I make really great LibGuides? How do I make the best LibGuides? And believe me, I've gotten this a lot. I have a lot of tips. There is an entire webinar that I've done. It's on YouTube called Best Practices for Building LibGuides. Just Google it. It'll show up. It's through ACRL Choice. It's got a lot of tips. But the one question that I get kind of right after that is, how do I get my users to use them? How do I get my users? I'm spending time. I'm spending my own time, or my staff are spending a significant amount of time. How do we get them to use them? Okay. Next slide. So when we're thinking about, there are lots of best practices, as I mentioned. Like, I could spend 2 hours, honestly, just talking about general tips, writing for the web, all of that stuff. But one of the biggest ones that I try to get people to remember is this concept of reducing cognitive overload, which is cognitive overload is what happens when cognitive capacity for learning is limited, and that learners are often overwhelmed with information and interactions that need to be processed simultaneously. So things that need to happen at the exact same time before meaningful learning can occur. And that means, where do I go? How do I understand what I'm reading? Is what I'm reading relevant to what I'm looking for before they're actually learning the material that's on the page, right? So when we're talking about reducing cognitive overload, one of the ways that I tell people to help reduce cognitive overload is put your guide content where they are as much as you can be, which is why with LibGuide CMS, we built LTI integration, which is learning tools operability. You can embed your guides literally right inside their courseware tools. For example, Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, Sakai, Desire to Learn, all of those. But what happens when they are out on the web? Because they're starting at Google, right? We know that. The research has proven that. we all do it. This is where we all go, my hand raised included, with, a master's degree. I still start there. And now they're starting at other places too, like ChatGPT, right? They're starting at these places. So how do you get your content in front of them when they're on those web pages that you don't have control over? You don't have control over Google. You don't have control over ChatGPT. You don't have control over Wikipedia. So how do you get your vetted, professionally, contextualized content in their faces? And to back up that information, there was a quote from Elizabeth Germain in Reference and User Services Quarterly that reinforces that basically says ensuring guides are effective requires the delivery of information and resources with learners at their point of need. So not only where they are, like where in the web they are, but also when they need it. I used to be an instruction librarian. I would teach English composition. Every English composition class that came through the university, they would have to come through for what we call library BI. Anybody still using those terms? Bibliographic instruction. And they would come in and it was called the 50-minute one-shot. And we would teach them all about the library and how to use the library resources. And guess what? We had very poor attention, little adoption, because they didn't need to know this stuff at that time. They were just at the beginning of the semester. They were right at the beginning of class. They didn't know what they would then need. They didn't know what they would need to know later on. They weren't at the point of need. So teaching them all of this preparatory information was not penetrating. It wasn't sinking in deep into their learning habits and into their psyche, because they didn't need to know it at that time. They needed it 6 weeks later when they were writing their research paper. They didn't need it now. Okay, next slide. Another thing to keep in mind, and we're seeing this more now than when I was a librarian. So you all that are in the field now are probably seeing this and are aware of this and are more acutely aware of this. This is post-COVID, post-COVID, current economic situation. Now, this is a specific report from the American Psychological Association. They do a yearly study called Stress in America. I know a lot of you are from other places around the world. Unfortunately, there is not one global report of stress of people in the world. I wish there was, but this was the most comprehensive one I could find that literally is year after year, and they've been doing it for many, many, many years. So there's a lot of long history there, and they can look back at, stress from 5 years ago versus stress from today. So in a Stress in America 2023 report, which was, I think, came out in November of 2023. So it's very, very recent. The largest increase in pre and post-pandemic stress levels was in the 18 to 34 group. You can see right there at the top, 34% of adults aged 18 to 34 rated their average daily stress level to be between an 8 and a 10, with 10 being the highest. So 34% of 18 to 34-year-olds are experiencing 10 out of 10, 8, 9, and 10 out of 10 levels of stress every single day. Next slide. They are feeling so stressed that they feel numb, that they have less patience, that they cannot function, that they are completely overwhelmed, that they cannot bring themselves to do anything, that they cannot focus. So when we're talking about these statistics and we're applying them to perhaps your demographic of the traditional student, the 18 to 22-year-old student. I'm not talking about maybe non-traditional students, although this probably could apply to them as well if they're in their late 20s and early 30s and working a full-time job and going to school at night, and they're a non-traditional student. Same concept probably applies to them as well. We're talking about a user group that is overwhelmingly feeling a significant amount of stress. So if we were to, take that number of about 35%, in a group of 100 students, 35 of them would be feeling 8, 9, or 10 levels of stress. So a pretty big portion of your population are feeling those incredible levels of stress, so stressed that they're having difficulty just functioning on a daily basis, never mind meeting, the intense rigors of academic research and all of the things that they need to do to be successful and succeed in school. And then, of course, we don't want to lose students. We don't want them to drop out. We don't want them to not continue on with their studies, right? So how do we keep that attrition level high as well? Next slide. On top of all of that, on top of all of these things, we've now got a new thing, right? It's always a new thing, and AI and ChatGPT and all of the AIs around there. And there was a University of Northampton study. They have an AI special interest group. They did a small local survey. This is not meant to be, a universal survey. You might read other surveys that have conflicting information, but they did a survey of their, user base, and they found that students have some ethical concerns about ChatGPT. I know we tend to presume like, oh, they don't care. They just want to go they're lazy. They want to go the fastest way. They just want to cheat and get the highest and not be paying attention and just get the best grade that they possibly can with the least amount of work. But they actually do have ethical concerns. There's a surprisingly low rate of adoption, which was really interesting. And this was big. They didn't have the skills to use the AI tool. They did not have the skills to use the AI tool. They had concerns about bias and accuracy. And they were really concerned that it was diminishing the value of their degree. There's nothing more concerning than being, for example, an English major and realizing that an AI could write better than you can, right? Now I'm graduating with a degree. Am I going to have a job in this economy, right? So they have real worries that they're going to be replaced before they've even made it out into the world. If they had used it prior, they did have a positive outlook, but if not used prior, they were really, really concerned about their future opportunities. So when we look back at kind of the things that I've mentioned, there are a couple of things to think about. Students are stressed. I think we can probably say students are stressed, with a portion of them being significantly stressed. But the study, also indicated that a lot of people had average stress levels of like 5 to 8, right? So not so stressed that they couldn't function, but still pretty high stress levels. They're confused. They're very confused. They are needing and craving your guidance. They absolutely do. Okay, next slide. So when we're talking about, the question, do students like AI? It's a yes and it's a no. I like to say good AI and bad AI. It's relative. These are not, pejorative terms, but good AI can be inspirational. It can help you rewrite clunky language. The joke I like to say is my husband gave me a Christmas card this year, and he wrote the word awesome 5 times in the card. And I was like, honey, you really could have used ChatGPT to like tighten this language up. Did you think about trying that? Because how many times are you going to tell me that I'm awesome? Let's try another word. So rewriting clunky language, also getting out of a language rut. We all do it. We all fall into using the same words over and over again, or the same phrases. And we need to think like, I sometimes write a paragraph and I'm like, man, I've used those same 20 words in rotation. I'm just kind of moving them around. Let me throw it into ChatGPT and have it give me some new words, right? And it's really helpful at providing endless examples, which people need for processing, right? We all do better when we have an example. It helps us process things. Do students like AI? An example of bad AI, when they want live help, they hate AI. They hate it. They hate it when they are having a problem with their credit card, or they're having a problem with their internet service provider, and they want to, they're fervently typing operator, live person. They do not want to be chatting with an AI tool, which puts them in a circular, the seventh circle of hell, which often happens. They want to chat with a real person. And this is where a librarian can be perfectly situated in this environment to provide guidance and live help when they want it. Okay. Next slide. So we already talked about LibGuides. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to LibAnswers, and I'm just going to ask a quick show of hands. How many of you are using Springshare's LibAnswers tool, specifically LibChat, which is the live chat with a chat operator and a librarian? How many folks utilizing that?
We've got some hands raising.
Yay. Okay. So I see Daily at MUSC. Awesome. Okay. So one of the things I mentioned is that we recently released a chatbot tool. And we like to say that it's not AI, it's LI, which stands for Librarian Intelligence. There is no AI, there is no artificial intelligence. Basically, you create your own if this, then that statements that guide end users towards the answers and resources they're looking for before they talk to a librarian. And the reason we built this was a lot of librarians were like, hey, we love chat, but when a student sees chat, they just navigate right to it. And when they know it's manned by a live person, they start asking us things that they could easily find themselves. That's literally on the page, like, what are your hours? And it's on the page. Our hours today are 9 to 5. Like, why are you at? It's right there. Like, you eyes up to the left, you can't miss it. So they wanted to create not necessarily a barrier, but a process for folks to be able to utilize already the resources and services that librarians are creating. They're already creating guides. You're already creating FAQs in your LibAnswer systems. You're already creating all of this content, and they go right to chat. And instead of taking 5 minutes to look for it themselves, they go right to chat and ask you for the answer, right? So chatbot can sit as a layer between the student and the librarian that kind of guides them through, do I have a question about the library? Do I have a question about searching books? Do I have a question about research help? Do I need to schedule an appointment? Or it's none of these, and I just really need to chat with you right now. So it can help, provide a selection of commonly answered questions to them before they get to, just chat with you right away. Next slide. So why did Springshare partner with Lean Library? So excellent question. And Amy's going to talk more about that integration point. But one of the things, from my slides, what I hope has come across is that our tools help librarians provide the best resources and years of your experience to students. And how do you get it to them when and where they need it is where Lean Library fits in, right? So we're really good in our lane of providing cloud-based tools for you to build your LibGuides and have chat and build FAQs. But the other lane of how do we deliver it when they need it? When they're writing that research paper at 3 a.m. and we're closed, how do we get our LibGuide in front of them? And how do we get it in front of them when they're on ChatGPT or on Wikipedia and they're not on the library website? That's not our lane. That's Lean Library's lane. So together, when our partnership allows us to kind of deliver your best content, your LibGuides content, when and where they need it. So helping to reduce that cognitive overload I mentioned, reducing research stress and anxiety. They already have enough stress. They have all of these external world stressors, world movement, market events that are going on. How do we not add to it by adding research stress on top of it? And once again, improving the reach and access of your content. Your content costs money. There is an actual dollar amount, probably to every single LibGuide you build, of actual staff time that has been put into building that content. So if you have invested hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of dollars and hours into building your content, let's improve the reach and reduce the cost of that investment. So the cost per use is lower, right? If you build one LibGuide and one person sees it, that costs you $5,000. If you built that same one LibGuide and it cost you $5,000 worth of staff hours to build it, but 20,000 people see it, the cost per goes down quite significantly, right? Economies of scale. So we're helping to improve the reach and access of your content, creating a better user experience, and promoting your work, which, as we know, takes a long time to create and has a lot of history of education behind it, right? And expertise. And most importantly, it embeds the library and the librarian right into the patron's workflows, not your workflows, their workflows. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, Amy, at this point.
Yes, turning to me. Thank you so much, Talia. That was amazing. So just taking a small step back, because I think most people on this call joining us might not be fully familiar with Lean Library yet. I've seen some familiar names, but a lot of people won't be, or won't be using the Lean Library workflow for LibGuides package anyway, which is what Talia and I are talking about today. So what is Lean Library? So Lean Library is a technology from Sage product that libraries can subscribe to for all their patrons to use. And I'd like to claim this quote as my own, but sadly it is BuzzFeed's. I think it was their old marketing directors. I just added it here because I think it encapsulates the why in a funny way of, we all know content is king. As Talia just said, we can spend hours and hours creating this content. It is king. The distribution is the queen, and she wears the pants, we're saying here. So what is it? So Lean Library, it's a product that takes library content and services to where your patrons are online via an extension on their browser. And there is a free version, so anyone and everyone can use it. You can go download it today, add it to Google Chrome or Edge or whatever you use. And what that does is streamlines access to all these open access repositories. So if you hit a paywall, I think Talia's sort of 3 a.m. writing, you said, or when a student is panicking at 11 p.m. and hasn't written their article that's due at 11 a.m. tomorrow, you hit a paywall, costs $75 and sometimes people panic and buy it, the paywall panic. So the free version just connects to open access repositories, but Lean Library as a library service takes all of your library content. So that is streamlining access to your holdings or licensed content through different publisher websites. It's saving patrons time when finding resources by streamlining access, integrating all with Shibboleth, Easy Proxy, whatever you use. And also it brings your library discovery services to sites like Google through the browser extension pop-up. And the last one here is that it surfaces library guidance at patrons' point of need, which is what we're really talking about today. So the LibGuide and LibChat integration, what does it do? So using our onboarding feature, we've integrated with Springshare to surface any of your library's LibGuides or other onboarding materials, so not just Springshare LibGuides, but in particular this case, at relevant points in your patrons' workflow. So certain academic resources and sites are really easy to use. Certain ones aren't. Particularly data repositories often require a lot of training and a lot of onboarding for students to use it. And to be honest, for undergraduate students, even Google Scholar requires training how to use Google Scholar. Google Scholar LibGuides are really, really popular. So it comes via the extension pop-up and gives that targeted training at the point of need. But what if my animation works? Let's see, it does. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't irritate the patrons with the pop-ups. It doesn't have to appear every time they land on a resource. It can surface it the first time they visit, and then patrons can choose to revisit that guide by navigating through to what we call the workflow librarian on the extension, which I'll show you in action in a minute. So they can relaunch it and revisit it anytime without having an invasive pop-up. Similarly, the LibChat feature. So we integrate with LibChat or other third-party solutions to deploy that library's chat to patrons online when or where they need it. And I'm going to show you some examples of this. Oh, I've gone too fast. This GIF's going to move faster than I can talk, so I'm going to let it run through once and then start again. So, hold on. Sorry, it started before I was ready to talk, but it won't be long. What you're going to see is a patron. Here we go. I'll start it again. Going to Google Scholar. They're searching for coffee. And through the Lean Library pop-up here, they can see there's an onboarding guide. The onboarding guide, oh, it stopped. the onboarding guide takes them off when they view onboarding to your library guidance of how to use Google Scholar. View onboarding, and it takes them out to University of Make Believe's Your Library's Guide on how to use it. Similarly, for LibChat integration, and apologies, I think they're clear on my screen, but they might be coming through a little bit fuzzy afterwards, is the LibChat. So you've seen a student who's landed on JSTOR, they've gone through the pop-up again, navigated to where there's help to have some library services and chat with the librarian, and popped up your library chat. They could drop their details and speak to a librarian there and then. So what are the results of this? One example is Utah State University, who just over a few months, I think it was 4 short months, saw a 450% increase in LibGuide usage, which is obviously massive. So the graph here shows the usage and views of their Google Scholar LibGuide, speaking of Google Scholar, before Lean Library, without the Lean Library integration, which is the blue figure there, and then post, and you can see that real jump up to how many views they're getting. With this lovely quote from Jason Folkman from his electronic resources librarian at Utah State, saying, for our patrons that use Lean Library, this integration allowed us to bring available library support materials directly to when and where they need them. Okay, so back to ChatGPT, because it wouldn't be a 2024 webinar without talking a lot about ChatGPT, would it? So as Talia rightly said, we say that students are starting on Google or PubMed or Wikipedia, but now they're also starting on ChatGPT, which is absolutely massive. It's very new. So beyond our integration with LibGuides and LibChat, Lean Library has a new integration with Sage Campus. Obviously, what we could do is use that LibChat. I think, can't remember which uni, but someone in the chat said they've created some guidance on ChatGPT. So we could absolutely deploy those guides on ChatGPT. But in addition to that, we know finding content is tough when it comes to ChatGPT. Hearing who are the expert voices in a sea of noise is also really tough. There's every YouTuber out there is claiming to be a ChatGPT expert. Knowing to cut through that noise is difficult. So we've introduced with Sage Campus, and for those who aren't familiar with Sage Campus, they're an online course provider by Sage. They have, I think it's over 400 hours now of structured online self-paced courses on skills and research methods, all from data literacy into information literacy, right through to getting published, so the whole spectrum of the researcher process. They've just launched a new course that asks for ChatGPT interactions by instructor Dr. Leo S. Lowe. People might know the name Leo Lowe. He is an AI expert and a dean at the University of New Mexico. His course empowers and equips learners to develop structured prompt engineering skills for efficient AI communication. It talks about the CLEAR principles, the CLEAR framework, which some of you might be familiar with, and how to critically analyze those responses and reflect and refine approaches. So I think some in the chat, people were saying earlier, what about the ethics? What about when ChatGPT spurts out rubbish and it's not quite right, how to check it? So this course delves into that. It takes about 60 minutes to complete. It's a totally free course, so after this, I'm going to pop it in the chat. It is a Sage channel, I've seen Simone ask, so Sage Campus is one of the Sage products, but this particular course is totally free for any patron, so I will put the link in the chat as well afterwards. And it just launched, I think, 3 or so weeks ago. It's brand new. And it's great, we want everyone to take it, but what Talia's been saying this whole time, we need them to take it at the right time, without disrupting their workflow, when they're about to start their studies, or when they're actively using ChatGPT. So what we're doing here is that Lean Library surfaces the course using that onboarding feature, that feature that also surfaces your LibGuides, and it surfaces the course via the extension pop-up to users on the open AI domain. So the course is actually about lots of AI tools, not just ChatGPT, despite what the title says. It's available for institutions using the Lean Library workflow for LibGuides or the Lean Library Futures packages, which is what Talia and I have been talking about today. And all their students and researchers or any of their patrons with that browser extension on their browser can take the course and get the certificate. And then you as librarians, you get stats on how many patrons are seeing, clicking it, and how many have downloaded the certificate. So, all right, let's see if this video goes a bit slower for me. I'm just going to show you it in action. So this is the OpenAI domain, and I'm going to show you a patron going to it who has Lean Library, and straight away, went very fast, so I will play it twice. That course is coming to pop up, and if they want to take it, it takes it full screen, and you can see it's structured, broken down into modules, and they can take that course. So I'm just going to do it quickly again. this user has Lean Library installed. They can see here with the Lean Library pop-up that they have a Sage Campus AI course that they can take and go and take that onboarding straight through and click it out. So just as a reminder, I think Talia's slide earlier was really perfect of what are the benefits of libraries and their patrons for this. What is the joining of content and distribution, king and queen, what does it give? So it reduces the cognitive overload for your patrons, and they are overloaded, as we have seen, they're stressed. It reduces the research stress and anxiety, whilst increasing the reach and improving access to your LibGuide content. Ultimately, better user experience, promoting your resources, and embedding the library and the librarian right back into the heart of that patron workflow. So I think we're right on time to jump into questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see our faces a bit clearer. Let's see that. Okay, thank you so much. So a couple of questions have come in through the chat, and please add any extra or feel free to raise your hand if you have anything to ask as well. But I wanted to start with a real bread and butter question that I really loved in the chat for you, Talia, and it was from Isla Scott on the call saying, 161 does sound like quite a lot of LibGuides for each college/uni or school. Does one specific web page count as a guide? Or surely not, I'd have thought one single guide, multiple pages about one subject, very existential. What counts as a LibGuide?
Great question. I saw that as well. So a guide is counted as the entire guide, no matter how many pages are in it. So a guide could have 12 pages within that guide, and that's only counted once. So that's one guide, 12 pages. So yeah, it does sound like quite a lot, that 161, but kind of putting it in context, we have a lot of large institutions using LibGuides, quite a significant amount. For example, University of Pennsylvania, they have thousands and 50,000, 60,000 students. So they're going to have more than 161 LibGuides. They're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We have, Michigan State, 90,000 students, something like that. So when those larger institutions can tend to skew the number up. And of course, we have lots of smaller institutions, community colleges that service a very small population. And they're not going to, 100 LibGuides is going to be a lot for them. But those larger ones maybe are pulling the number up. So I did an average. I didn't do a median because I just don't have the individual. I'd have to comb through 5,800 LibGuide systems and write down what everyone has and then pick the median of that. So I did an average. But yeah, I think probably the larger institutions are skewing that number. We also have University of Phoenix, you know what I mean? So a lot of those institutions maybe are pulling the number. But I think somebody else mentioned that 161 sounds about right. So
yeah, I was tracking. So I think SRUC has 75. Someone said AUBG 62, and then someone said so that sounds about right. And response from Isla there saying, "Okay, thanks." She probably thought we had tens, but we're smaller than some places. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I had another question come in through the Q&A anonymously. So do put your hand up if this was you, saying we update our LibGuides a lot because providers and academic resources update and upgrade their resources a lot. It's a lot. When we update them, do we need to update them in Lean Library too? Is it just double the work? And no is the answer. It's a live integration, so updating them in your Springshare account or whatever third-party provider you use, but in this case, Springshare would automatically update it. So it's not a moment in time that you're uploading it. It's not a moment in time file that you're putting in Lean Library. It is completely live, so you'll get it that way. Capture that right, Talia, or is there anything else to add?
No, that's great. And kudos to you for updating your LibGuides a lot.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear people in the chat how often LibGuides are updated. And that would be that would be great to hear. Lots of questions just very quickly on the presentation. Will we share the PowerPoint? We can, yes, if you're happier for us to as well, Talia. When we send the recording out in 2 days' time, we can send a link to this as well. It comes through on Zoom as quite an ugly link. We can't hyperlink it. So please know it might be a really long, ugly link, but it will be the right one. Okay, great. Any other questions? Let me just look through the Q&A and chat. Not a question, but I've seen there's a lot of people saying, talking about, so when I asked a question to the audience of, have you made any guidance materials or LibGuides for ChatGPT yet? What's happening? And I've seen you said there's worries here about legal issues, about plagiarism, etc., but you're not sure if we've officially used it yet or not. I was going to say, Talia, from obviously you speak to a lot of librarians. Do you know many who have done a great, any library that's a great practice of this yet? Have any LibGuides been created that you can think of yet?
You know, I can't. That's a great question. Not to say that there aren't any. There, like I said, there are almost 1 million guides built, and new ones are getting published every day. So I can't keep on top of all of the new content that's being built, but from just general keeping an eye on the buzz and the pulse of what's going on, I don't see anybody building anything that has maybe gone viral or has been talked about or presented about at conferences or shared on social media. I haven't seen any of that, which makes me think that I wonder if librarians are doing a little bit of a wait and see approach, which is understandable. I'm also doing a wait and see approach. I don't use ChatGPT. I'm nervous about using it. So I'm also doing a wait and see approach. But I wonder if this is to the detriment as well. There's a cost and a benefit to this. There's a pro and a con. So, the pro being that you're there at the beginning and you're there considered an expert right at the beginning of this, and people will lean on you for guidance, and students will see you as being ahead or at least with them on this journey versus them kind of going it alone. And then you come later on with maybe more knowledge and more experience and you're waiting it out, but you're behind the curve. The herd's already moved. There's a funny quote, and I don't know who said it, but there was like back in the olden days, with lords and whatnot. And this lord is watching all of these people move through, and he goes, "There go my people. How do they know where to go? I am not leading them." So you can't lead from behind is basically the point. I botched that quote terribly. I'm sorry, but you kind of get where I was going. You can't lead from behind. So you're either at the beginning or you're not, and there's pros and cons to that.
No, completely. I actually know which quote you're talking about, but I can't remember exactly what it is.
How will they know where to go if I'm not leading them or something like that?
Similar. And Kai Towson, Kai, apologies if I pronounced your surname incorrectly there, I'm terrible at botching names, has just posted the DMU's Gen AI LibGuide, which is great. And I hope that people could open that one now. I think the original link wasn't working, saying they're doing a lot of work around the using of AI as a developmental tool, but alongside many caveats, which I think is probably wise. We see it's something that's here to stay and students are using it. Completely agree. Students are using it. I very annoyingly didn't pull it for this webinar, which I should have. But I've seen some recent stats on how many students are starting on ChatGPT, and just how many hits ChatGPT is getting a day is just it's insanity. So we just need to catch them at that point of need, whether that is through an assist message, a library assist message through the pop-up on Lean Library, whether it is really structured one-page or multi-page LibGuides, Talia, or the Sage Campus course, anything like that is really the best way to catch them. And I had a really interesting chat with Leo Lowe, actually the author of the course, last week. It's been webinar central at the moment, but last week, and he was mentioning it at the University of New Mexico. So we speak to a lot of faculty on this webinar. A lot of them were asking, where do I go to for students for guidance? And he asked the question, well, have you gone to your library yet? Because have you directed them to the library? Because we've actually created lots of material on this. And yeah, it was really interesting to hear the faculties sort of say, oh God, yes, we should go and hear what Leo is doing at his library around training, particularly faculty and staff, to then train students. We have 1 minute to go, so we're on perfect time. And I think that's all the questions, but there's great chat has come through, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much for your time today, Talia. It's always great to talk with you. And thank you everyone for joining. It's been a great turnout. As I said, the recording will be sent around. We'll share the slides through that ugly link. And if you want to hear more, please get in touch. Have lovely days, everybody. Bye,
Thanks,
Talia.
Amy. Thank you. Bye, everybody.